Niaga AWANI with me, Nina Rosman. We are live at Mandarin Oriental, Kuala Lumpur Street, bringing you the live event of ISWC 2023, International Social Wellbeing 2023, which is held for the 10th annually this year, which has come back bigger and stronger. So definitely one of the themes that they are focusing on this year is how to overcome the critical gaps of social security and how can they advocate and promote the fundamental rights to social protection towards a resilience and even inclusive societies. So definitely in these two events spanning for 2 days, for those who have just joined us on Niaga AWANI, so ISWC is an event which was held 2 days starting from yesterday until today. We have experts all over the world, from home to abroad, from morning to evening, sharing their insight, where this is a platform reserved as a knowledge platform, bringing you broad spectrum of subjects in pertaining of social protection and even social well-being. And definitely you can see from all of our shows, from morning till afternoon, we will be sharing you insight. We will highlight the blended conversation, and even we want to do engaging panel session, and even we have an excellent prospect networking here that we can see, which help us to explore and even learn about how is the role of organization, even governments and even individual, how can they work collectively in building the world in a better future in the midst of prevailing uncertainties, definitely. So definitely I don't want to waste any time. We want to see on the bigger aspect about social market economies. How can we see the aspect of social well-being and social protection in the social market economies? And definitely we want to bring you our guests here joining here at Mandarin Oriental, Kuala Lumpur here together to explain about. Definitely I want to welcome Professor Dr. Muhammad Aslam Muhammad Hanif at the Department of Economics, International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM. I want to say, Professor, thank you very much for joining me.
Assalamualaikum, and thank you for inviting me.
Waalaikumsalam, thank you for joining. So definitely it's a very crowded event, back to back with tentative talking about iaitu broad subject pertaining social well-being and even social protection. So definitely in this context, we want to talk about social protection and social well-beings. Maybe we can see in terms context of the social market economies. Maybe we can start help us understand what is the key principles, even the strategies, even the policies, initiative that we can see over the years, the trend in the social market economy.
Thank you, Nina. I think the first thing that we must keep in mind is that we are now living in a different world. The old model does not work. And when I say the old model, I'm referring to what in mainstream economics is this greed-based, me-only system in which individuals are supposed to make decisions that mainly cater for their own well-being. The new model that we need, and I think this is where the social market economy does give some insights. Of course, no model can be imported 100% and applied in Malaysia. We have to maybe develop our own model. And I think this is where the Madani economy, which I think maybe the Prime Minister will talk about when he comes a bit later on, is going to play a major role. So coming back to the social market economy, there are three main principles. One is the social individual, the second is solidarity, and the third is something called subsidiarity. The social individual, I think, is a very important base. What it means is that the agent in the economy, the human being, is no longer seen as just the individual, but a social individual. So as I said just now, whatever decisions I make are not only meant to benefit me, but there should be benefit to society, to a larger group, including the environment, including the planet, right? So we talk about people, planet, profits. These are very important things that have gained recognition now globally. So that social individual base is very important. Solidarity, no one to be left behind. Now again, some people may say we've been talking about inclusiveness for at least
a while now,
a decade, right? So how do you actually make sure there is genuine inclusiveness? So this solidarity principle, I think, comes in. And I think again, the economy Madani principles, we'll talk about this a bit later, again show this new alternative that we need to improve. Subsidiarity, the third principle of the social market economy, talks about everybody being responsible. There's no free lunch. I think one of the main challenges in Malaysia over the decades, and by the way, whatever we may say, I think Malaysia has done reasonably well. For a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, for the last 60 years, Malaysia has had probably about almost a 6% growth rate annually. That's a very good achievement. Of course, there's always room for improvement.
Correct.
So the subsidiarity principle basically says everybody has to work together. The individual is responsible for himself or herself and his or her family. If that's not enough, the community comes in. And if that's not enough, the government comes in. So that's a major change, because I think in Malaysia, a lot of people expect the government to do everything, right? Especially now when times are challenging, everybody's looking at the government and expecting the government to do miracles. But actually, it has to start with all these different components playing their part. So these three principles, social, individual, solidarity and subsidiarity, I think are very crucial in developing this new model, which is probably what economy Madani or Madani economy is going to try and highlight.
But how can we apply these three principles, as you mentioned, the social individual, the solidarity, and even the subsidiarity? Maybe we can, as I mentioned, apply to promote the equitable decision making and economic outcomes within the Madani economy.
Okay, now when you talk about Madani, at least as far as I know, there is no document so far that is talking about Madani economy. I was told the Prime Minister made an announcement some time ago that there is going to be a document very soon. Right?
I think, yes.
But what we have is this Membangun Negara Madani, or the English version, Script for a Better Malaysia, that was presented before GE15.
GE15, correct.
So it was launched when the Prime Minister was the opposition leader. All right. So in that document, there are 6 pillars of what is called the Madani vision for Malaysia. Sustainability, which in Malay, the word used is kesejahteraan.
Kesejahteraan.
All right. And I think this word sejahtera, this requires a whole session by itself.
Yes.
You're talking about a holistic development, not just material development.
Yes.
So social dimension, political dimension, this come into this meaning of kesejahteraan. So sustainability is kemampanan. Yeah, sustainability. We are talking about economic sustainability that includes not only this generation, but the next generation as well. Right? So environmental issues, climate change is going to affect Malaysia. So that sustainability thing is very, very important. Then you got care and compassion. I think this is very, very, very important when we're talking about social well-being, social protection. How do you make sure that the less well-off, how are they taken care of? And I think this is certainly something that the government has to lead. I think if it's left just to the market forces, it may not happen.
Yeah, it may not
right?
happen. Correct.
So that is a very important care and compassion pillar. And then you have respect. I think in a multi-ethnic, multicultural society like Malaysia, mutual respect is so important, right? It's very easy for us to divide society along ethnic lines. For a long time, geographical lines, spatial lines, East Malaysia, West Malaysia. So how do you show this mutual respect? It's through your policies. Policies that benefit everyone. Innovation, right? Sustainability, care, compassion, mutual respect, innovation. You're not going to develop the economy or society without this innovation. This means that every individual needs to be able to know their place, what they're supposed to do, and not depend on handouts.
But are we far from the Madani economy, as you mentioned before the GE15? We're just starting with the framework. Maybe in your expectations, is it far? Are we trying to achieve the goal of Madani economy?
I mean, I don't think it's something that is very far away, because many of those pillars that have been mentioned have been part and parcel of our Malaysian society in all Asian cultures. We talked about mutual respect, we talked about care and compassion. These are all part of all our cultures in Malaysia, right? The prosperity thing is what I was talking about, kesejahteraan, right? It's not just material prosperity that we want, which is probably what the word makmur talked about, right? I remember the previous government talked about wawasan kemakmuran bersama. They used the word makmur. And I think makmur usually means material well-being. But kesejahteraan talks about a much bigger concept. And finally, trust. Again, in multi-ethnic Malaysia, building trust is so important, right? So if you look at these 6 pillars of the Madani vision, it's actually talking about what we need as a nation to move to this new era, yeah, which is really uncharted waters, right? But one thing is clear. We can't go back to the old model, the model that depended on low wage, low skill labor, pushing Malaysia up. We benefited, probably some benefited more than most people, but we have to move to a new model. And that new model, I think, is what the Madani economy is trying to do.
Yeah, even the Prime Minister announced that Madani economy is planning to announce Madani economy models or policy documents. Actually, it's quite very soon. So definitely we want to understand what is our expectation on this announcement and what makes the Madani economy something that Malaysia can take forward from.
You know, so what we need to do, these 6 principles, which is in the main document, now has to be translated into the economic sphere. Right? So these 6 pillars, sustainability, care and compassion, respect, innovation, prosperity, trust, needs to be transformed and materialized in the economy. So how would we do it? So certainly when you talk about sustainability, I believe already the government has announced plans for energy, for example. We want to move away from the dependence on fossil fuels
to renewable energy.
To renewable energy. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, recently there was an announcement we have changed our targets to achieve, was it a 30% target or something? I may be mixing up the numbers, yeah, but there is new emphasis on renewable energy. So that's an example of where we need to go, right? So resources have to be pushed to that direction, yeah, as a reflection of sustainability and of course innovation, right? Because it requires innovation to go down that road.
So do we need like maybe concrete, specific, as you said, we need to be pushed. What are the concrete, specific initiative or even we can say policy, one of the 2 things, aspect we can look from, or we have to look at other structure for this?
Okay, so now the Madani economy is something that is new. It's still in the process of being developed, right?
Yes.
But we can learn, and I said, from the social market economy. One of the things that we learn from the social market economy is that the market has to be the main or the primary mover. It is the market. But it's not the market left to just itself, yeah, to govern. Markets, unfortunately, are not very good at governing themselves.
Correct.
Right? Especially when the agents in the economy are all thinking of themselves. Right? Although Adam Smith's idea of the invisible hand was a wonderful thing, I think it doesn't work in real life. Unless you have the agents in the market that have certain values, certain principles that they adhere to. One of those principles is thinking of others. All right? So you can leave it to the market provided the individual agents are also thinking of others in their decision making.
Okay.
Right? So we need to have a market, but in the social market economy, they talk about ordered markets or guided markets. I think in Malaysia, we've always had guided markets. The government has been intervening in the economy, since the 70s, yeah, through the new economic policy. So it's not something new, but that order has to be based on ethical values, not the economic values that only talk about material gain. And I think that's the challenge. So the market as the main engine of growth, but the government has to play a role,
Holistic approach.
especially for those who cannot cater for themselves.
Yes.
And I think that's one area that in Malaysia we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
It's very frightening. I was hearing the discussion yesterday. 80% of Malaysian workers don't earn enough to pay taxes. Now, if that's true, if that's what I heard, then this is a major issue, right? So if you want to talk about an EPF, savings for the future, and you have big numbers that are not covered by the EPF, the informal sector. At the same time, you also have people who are not getting even enough income to have any savings. That's a big worry. So I think this is where the government has to come in. Well, the community first, that's the third sector, something that maybe in Malaysia we have not developed sufficiently. The third sector, or the not-for-profit sector, has to play a big role. The community has to come in. But the government has a role to play by setting up and improving those social insurance or takaful or protection schemes in the society that take care especially of those who are at the lower levels.
Okay, as you mentioned, the social economy we can see that it was very impacted very badly. It shows how very weak our social security protection and everything. The system is quite weak. And then especially after post-pandemic, we have that the government has to push further, especially to cater to the one who cannot even reach for help, even on the first level. But talking about the unity of government, we want to definitely, how can the unity government effectively implement structural reform to the Malaysian economies, considering the diverse coalitions and even historical challenges in policy implementation. So with all of this issue, can you see the unity government effectively implement structural reform within this year?
Nina, the great thing about Malaysia is whatever we've done, we have actually moved gradually. Nothing has happened in Malaysia in the form of a revolution. Things have always evolved. And one of the things that we have today is a unity government, a coalition made up of former rivals.
Yes.
Right? Now, very interesting, in 2021, the precursor to this unity government, I think, has already been established when the government signed an MOU with the opposition. Right, so the current government, the Pakatan Harapan-led government, signed an MOU when they were in opposition with the government. In other words, to work together for the betterment of the nation. Was it in October or November 2021? Yeah. So they had to work together. In other words, not to just oppose because they are opposition, but work together to improve things for everyone. GE15 put us in uncharted waters. For the first time, we have no single coalition having enough seats to rule the country. So wisdom prevailed. Fortunately, wisdom prevailed. People listened, and they formed this unity government, which by December 2022 had a 148 seat support in Parliament, which is 2/3.
Yes,
right?
That's a lot.
Yet, we see so much uncertainty, right? External situation is also not making things easy. Everybody is expecting this government, unity government, to produce miracles. It's been 7 months. Now, I know, of course, people want to see results.
Yes.
But if we just go back in history, when we had Najib Razak as the Prime Minister, who came in 2008, he only came out with his national transformation policy, or the big framework that he had, 2 or 3 years after he became Prime Minister. And yet, this unity government in 7 months is being told to solve all their problems. It's not going to be an easy thing. You need the buy-in from all partners in your coalition, right? And then everybody has to read this Membangun Negara Madani. I think that's the first thing, right? And secondly, you need to be able to have a united front, right? Now, one of the issues are ministers or ministries seem to be still working in silos. And I think that's a major issue. I would think that probably we need to have a kind of a unity committee, unity government committee that works on some of these issues. It may already be there, it's possible, but just like we had the National Economic Action Council, NEAC, during 98 crisis and even maybe after that, they were meeting almost every day, right, to solve issues together. So I think that is something that needs to be done. However, if there is one person, I think, who can pull this through, I think it has to be our current Prime Minister. He was the opposition leader holding a coalition at that time of PKR, DAP, and the Islamic Party of Malaysia, right? DAP and PAS being together for almost a decade.
Yes.
Right? So he was able to keep them together. So if there is one person who can bring Barisan Nasional, Pakatan Harapan, GPS and GRS together, it's probably our current Prime Minister. With the support, of course, of everybody. That's the big challenge.
Talking with the support of everybody, as you mentioned, the government's really going to have a big work to go through.
Sure.
Even though it's been 7 months, but we still have a lot way to go through. And maybe some people have a very high expectation, thinking it wants to be done here and there. But we still have to think about the short, medium, and long-term solutions and efforts. But basically, you mentioned about the agent competition. So maybe we know that another layer of helping the level of helping the government, we know from the agent, other than the community itself, society itself. But maybe what is their role? How can they play their task effectively? By maybe what measure can be taken to foster cooperation and minimize unnecessary competition between the economy agent as advocate within all of our economy plan framework and even Madani economy.
I mean, firstly, I think we need to keep in mind some are immediate issues that need to be addressed. And I think we saw this in the budget that was presented by the current government, I think in February or March. Allocations have been increased to those farmers, although sometimes in very unconventional means, right? You got the boss of Bernas to make a payout. That's a wonderful example of what can be done. An act of, somebody who is in the higher levels coming out and giving something to those who are at the lower levels. So that was one of the things that was done in the former budget, in the previous budget. Allocations to Sabah Sarawak, certainly two states that have been left behind in Malaysia's development as a whole, has been given a bigger allocation. Even budgets to poorer states in Peninsula, including Kelantan, although it's an opposition government running the state, was given increased allocation for floods and so on. So these are examples that have been done for short-term measures. So budget is usually a short-term measure. You've got the 12th Malaysia Plan, and the midterm review is, I think, coming up very soon. That, I think, is going to be the first indication of what I think the current government is going to do in the medium term, right? There have been a lot of community engagement sessions, giving inputs, but it's important to keep in mind that this 12th Malaysia Plan was not the current government's plan, right? But the midterm review is. So what I think we're going to see, elements of what this Madani vision means will be seen in the midterm review. All right? For example, we talked about the energy thing. There will be an emphasis on renewable resources or renewable energy sources. I think I heard even discussion of a long-term plan to go for hydrogen as a source of energy. Very interesting idea, but certainly long-term, right? So the midterm review, I think, is going to be it. What about EPF? Okay. Now, personally, we had a debate, I think, a few months ago. People were insisting to take out even more money from the EPF. Those who had enough in the savings, why can't we take out Yeah, there was a discussion. People were saying you should let them take out their EPF because it's their own money. But you see, that's exactly where the social market economy and the Madani economy differs. If I only think of myself, then I should be able to take out my money and take care of myself. But I need to think, what is the impact if EPF total amounts now fall as a whole? And we've lost quite a bit. When the first 2 or 3 rounds people were taking out of EPF, we lost a lot in terms of the total amounts. What will it impact society as a whole if I continue to take out money, even though it's mine? So the social market economy and the Madani economy requires us to think not only of ourselves, but also of the impact on society, right? So I really need to think of other ways how I can, think of myself, even though I have my own money there, but I need to think of other measures. And I think this is what the government is tackling with.
Actually, we are left with 1 minute before receiving the arrival of Prime Minister. So basically, during this event, for 2-day event at Mandarin Oriental Kuala Lumpur here, so basically, we know the agenda of ISWC 2023 is to enhance the understanding of the critical gaps in social security coverage, and they want to champion the fundamental rights to social protections towards a very we can call it resilience and inclusive societies. But in terms of, we can say, for this 1 year, few year, are we Malaysia? Are we on the right track of dealing in the efforts of pertaining to the issue of social protection and social well-being in the future? With 1 minute, maybe.
We have an excellent EPF system in Malaysia, right? I think it has proven itself. Everybody sometimes uses EPF dividend returns as the benchmark, right, on what you should be getting for your investment. So I think EPF has done a wonderful job. There's always room for improvement. The biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, right? So we can enhance, we can improve, and I think this conference is supposed to be talking about how we can widen the net to cover more people and to make sure that no one is left behind. And I think we can do it because we have people, especially in this case in the EPF, that I think are doing a wonderful job.
All right, I want to say definitely thank you very much for your insight. With the theme of ISWC 2023 this year is change the game to build the world that we want. Definitely with your insight, we hope can fulfill with understanding towards the theme of ISWC this year. And definitely we're hoping ISWC 2023 to go big and bigger next year, where they will bring diverse perspective and even experience in this event. Definitely stay tuned with Awani to get the latest update from time to time. And I'm Nina Rosman signing off for Niaga Awani today, and catch you on the next.